African countries that went broke, from rich countries to poor countries. Africa is a continent rich in history, culture, and natural resources. Throughout its long and complex history, many African countries have experienced both prosperity and decline. Some countries have gone from being among the wealthiest nations on the continent to struggling with poverty and economic challenges. This shift from wealth to poverty can be due to a variety of factors, including political instability, conflict, corruption, and economic mismanagement. Despite the many challenges these countries have faced, they continue to be home to resilient and resourceful people who are working to rebuild their economies and improve their living standards. In this context, it is important to recognize the complexities and nuances of African economies and to approach the topic with sensitivity and nuance. By understanding the challenges that these countries have faced, we can better appreciate the resilience of their people and the potential for growth and development in the future. In this video, we shall be looking at the African countries that went from richest in the 1990s and 2000s to poverty. But first, if you are new here, welcome. Be sure to subscribe and turn on notification so you don't miss any of our videos. In no particular order, here are 5 African countries that went broke. 1. Libya. From 2006 to 2011, Libya witnessed its greatest economy boom till date, climaxing at $92 billion in GDP in 2011 with a GDP per capita that stood at almost $17. Fast forward to 2023, Libya's nominal GDP currently stands at $41 billion, which is a 60% decline from 2011. Libya is a country that has experienced significant economic challenges in recent years, despite having significant oil reserves and a relatively small population. In the 1960s and 1970s, Libya experienced a period of economic growth and development, thanks in large part to its oil industry. However, political instability, economic mismanagement, and conflict have hindered the country's economic progress in recent decades, leading to a decline in living standards and widespread poverty. One of the major factors contributing to Libya's economic decline has been political instability. In 1969, Colonel Muammar Gaddafi seized power in a coup, and he ruled the country for over 4 decades. Gaddafi's regime was marked by political repression, human rights abuses, and economic mismanagement. Despite the country's significant oil wealth, Gaddafi's government did not invest in infrastructure or diversify the economy, which left the country vulnerable to fluctuations in oil prices. In 2011, a popular uprising and international intervention led to the overthrow of Gaddafi's regime. While the overthrow of Gaddafi was viewed by many as a positive development, it also led to increased political instability and conflict in the country. Since Gaddafi's ouster, Libya has been marked by a power struggle between various factions, including the internationally recognized government in Tripoli and a rival government based in the east. This conflict has hindered economic development and stability in the country, as foreign investment has declined and oil production has been disrupted. Another factor contributing to Libya's economic decline has been economic mismanagement. Despite having significant oil reserves, Libya's economy has not been diversified, and the country has not invested in infrastructure or other industries. This has left the country vulnerable to fluctuations in oil prices, as was seen in the 1980s and 1990s when oil prices declined, leading to a recession in the country. Additionally, corruption has been a problem in Libya, with government officials and elites siphoning off state resources and engaging in other forms of economic mismanagement. The ongoing conflict in Libya has also had a significant impact on the country's economy. Since the overthrow of Gaddafi, Libya has been marked by violence and instability, with rival factions vying for power. The conflict has led to a decline in foreign investment and oil production, which has in turn led to a decline in government revenue. This has made it difficult for the government to provide basic services and maintain infrastructure. which has contributed to a decline in living standards for many Libyans. The decline in oil production has been particularly significant for Libya, as oil exports make up a large portion of the country's GDP. In 2010, Libya was producing over 1.5 million barrels of oil per day, but by 2016, production had declined to less than 300,000 barrels per day. This decline in production has been due in part to the conflict in the country, as infrastructure has been damaged, and foreign firms have been hesitant to invest in the country. 2. Zimbabwe. Zimbabwe, once known as the breadbasket of Africa, has experienced significant economic decline in recent years. The country was once a major agricultural producer and had a relatively strong economy, but political instability, land reform, and hyperinflation have all contributed to the country's economic challenges. One of the factors contributing to Zimbabwe's economic decline has been political instability. The country gained independence from Britain in 1980, and for the first decade or so, the country experienced relative political stability and economic growth. However, in the late 1990s and early 2000s, political tensions began to rise, and the government led by President Robert Mugabe became increasingly authoritarian. The government began seizing land from white farmers, which led to a decline in agricultural production and a loss of foreign investment. Additionally, the government has been accused of human rights abuses and corruption, which has further contributed to the country's economic challenges. Another factor contributing to Zimbabwe's economic decline has been hyperinflation. In the early 2000s, the government began printing money to finance its operations, which led to a rapid increase in inflation. In 2008, the country experienced hyperinflation, with prices doubling every 24 hours at the peak of the crisis. This hyperinflation led to a collapse in the country's currency and a decline in living standards for many Zimbabweans. The decline in agriculture has been another major factor contributing to Zimbabwe's economic decline. Prior to the land reform program, Zimbabwe was a major agricultural producer, with a significant portion of the country's GDP coming from agriculture. However, the land reform program led to a decline in agricultural production, as many of the new farmers were inexperienced and lacked the resources and knowledge necessary to maintain productive farms. Additionally, the government's policies, such as price controls and export restrictions, further hindered agricultural production and led to shortages of basic goods. The decline in agriculture, combined with hyperinflation and political instability, has led to widespread poverty and economic challenges in Zimbabwe. Many Zimbabweans have been forced to leave the country in search of better economic opportunities, and those who remain have struggled to make ends meet. The government has made some efforts to address the country's economic challenges in recent years, such as introducing a new currency in 2019 and enacting some economic reforms. However, the legacy of political instability and economic mismanagement has made it difficult for the country to rebuild its economy and improve the living standards of its people. 3. Angola. Between 2010 to 2015, Angola was one of the richest countries in Africa with a nominal GDP reaching a whopping $140 billion in 2014. In 2020, Angola witnessed a massive decline in its economy, losing more than 50% of its wealth. Angola is another African country that has experienced significant economic challenges in recent years. The country was once a prosperous country with a strong oil industry, but the drop in oil prices in recent years has led to economic challenges and a decline in living standards. Oil has been a major contributor to Angola's economy for several decades. In the 1970s, the country began investing heavily in its oil industry, and by the early 2000s, oil accounted for the majority of the country's export earnings. However, the drop in oil prices in recent years has had a significant impact on Angola's economy. In 2014, oil prices began to decline, and by 2016, they had fallen by more than 50%. This decline in oil prices led to a decline in government revenue, as well as a decline in foreign investment and economic growth. Another factor contributing to Angola's economic challenges has been corruption. Despite the country's significant oil wealth, much of the revenue generated by the oil industry has been siphoned off by government officials and elites. This has led to a lack of investment in infrastructure and other industries, which has left the country vulnerable to fluctuations in oil prices. Additionally, corruption has contributed to a lack of trust in the government, which has hindered economic growth and development. 4. Sierra Leone. One of the major factors contributing to Sierra Leone's economic decline has been conflict. The country experienced a brutal civil war in the 1990s, which led to the displacement of millions of people and the destruction of infrastructure and productive assets. The war also led to a decline in foreign investment and a loss of confidence in the country's economy. While the war officially ended in 2002, the legacy of conflict has continued to hinder economic growth and development in the country. Another factor contributing to Sierra Leone's economic decline has been corruption. Despite the country's significant natural resources, including diamonds, gold, and bauxite, much of the revenue generated by these industries has been siphoned off by government officials and elites. This has led to a lack of investment in infrastructure and other industries, which has left the country vulnerable to fluctuations in commodity prices. Additionally, corruption has contributed to a lack of trust in the government, which has hindered economic growth and development. The decline in the diamond industry has also been a major contributor to Sierra Leone's economic challenges. Prior to the civil war, Sierra Leone was one of the largest diamond producers in the world, and diamonds accounted for a significant portion of the country's export earnings. However, the war led to a decline in diamond production, as well as a loss of foreign investment and a decline in government revenue. Additionally, the diamond industry has been plagued by illegal mining and smuggling, which has further hindered economic growth and development in the country. Despite these challenges, there are some signs of hope for Sierra Leone's economy. The government has taken steps to address corruption and improve economic management, and there is potential for economic diversification in industries such as agriculture and tourism. Additionally, the country has made progress in rebuilding infrastructure and providing basic services to its citizens. However, the legacy of conflict, corruption, and economic mismanagement will likely continue to pose challenges for the country in the years to come. 5. Democratic Republic of Congo. From the 1990s to late 2000s, the DRC witnessed a massive decline in its economy, mainly due to war and political instability. The Democratic Republic of Congo, DRC, with its vast natural resources, including minerals, timber, and agricultural land, was once considered one of the wealthiest countries in Africa. However, decades of political instability, conflict, and corruption have contributed to a decline in living standards and economic growth. The DRC gained independence from Belgium in 1960, but political instability and conflict followed, leading to a decline in economic growth. In the 1990s, the country experienced a civil war that further hindered economic development and led to a decline in foreign investment. Additionally, corruption has been a significant challenge for the DRC, as government officials and elites have siphoned off much of the revenue generated by the country's natural resources, leading to a lack of investment in infrastructure and other industries. The decline in agriculture and manufacturing has also contributed to the country's economic decline. Thanks for watching this video and subscribe to the channel for more.